What's up, everybody? It's Reggie Williams, founder and CEO of Ambrosia for Heads. And with me, I have Jake Payne, our editor in chief. And together, this is our What's the Headline podcast. What's happening, man?
Yo, man, just another day in paradise, feeling good. I think we thought we'd be doing kind of a look back at 2021. But once again, here we are mid-December, and the hip hop gods are giving us much more important things to talk about.
They keep giving us gifts. It's crazy, man. I was ready to wrap it up. We have 2 weeks left, end of the year, just shut it down. But last week was big. Last week was bigger than I think anyone realized. We had the Kanye West and Drake concert to free Larry Hoover, like so many different elements, so many storylines coming in. But there's one storyline that came out of it that I don't think anyone caught. And I didn't even catch it until preparing for this podcast. And I started going through the song selection. I was like, wait a minute. Wait, what? And then, so let's get into it. It's crazy. So let's start from the top. Kanye West and Drake are in concert. That's a big deal because one, two of the biggest stars in hip hop, but two guys who have been beefing on and off for 12 years or so, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah,
and I mean, working with each other in that time, but still beefing. Like, doesn't that say something about rap and hip hop in the 2000s?
Yeah, like in a weird way, right? Like, like on again, off again, but in a really like fixated on each other in a way that we haven't seen artists be fixated on each other maybe since like 50 and Rick Ross, something like that. But even longer, it's weird.
Yeah, I'm gonna say The Game in 50 or The Game in Jay-Z. Game was good with fixations, and yeah, this one is wild. But I think this does take it to new heights. Like, this is the fixation between these two guys who are arguably both, like, if you were to pick three superstars of hip hop, of rap right now, of the last 10 years, it's hard to put either one of these guys not in that top three.
Yeah, and the strange thing is how they're drawn to each other, right? Because there's a lot of dudes who just don't like mess with each other, and like it is what it is. Like they just are not in the same orbit. They'll diss the person, but they're not. But these guys, they'll sneak this, they'll come back and come back into each other's lives, they'll work together, and then like they're falling apart. It's like almost like a relationship. It's very, very interesting, so but and we'll get to that, but they came together on December 9th, I think it was, on Thursday, and for a concert to benefit Larry Hoover. Kanye has been working to free Larry Hoover now for several months, if not several years. A lot of people speculate that part of his working so closely with Donald Trump was in part to try and broker a pardon for Larry Hoover, right? A lot of people thought that was going to happen. It didn't happen. But he continued the quest. So this is sponsored by Amazon Prime. Did you check it out real time?
So that was a tricky one for me. I'm a Pittsburgh native. That was a Thursday night football game for the Steelers, last gasp of hope. So I was going in between because that game, if anyone followed, went a whole other place and then it came back. So I was going between. And then afterwards, especially as you and I talked, I went and I watched every single minute of it because I did not want to miss a thing.
Word. So it was supposed to start at like
8.
Like 11 o'clock East Coast time. But it ended up starting at like 9:30 Pacific, which is 12:30 East Coast time. So I was in bed like last time, man. Like Bone Thugs and Harmony versus 3-6. I was in bed.
Yeah.
I caught a little bit of it. But it was a huge event. So it's at Los Angeles Coliseum, 70,000 people. It was up there with Twitch's biggest streamed events and having 334,000 concurrent viewers. That's simultaneous. So that means that millions of people tuned in uniquely, but at one time it was like 334,000, which is huge. It's not as big as some verses, right? Some verses have been in the million range, like Erykah Badu and Jill Scott were 750,000. Jeezy and Gucci Mane were in the million, and Brandy and Monica was like 1 million concurrent users. That's That's award show numbers. That's gigantic to have that many people tune in at the same time. But this is still, no slouch.
Well, and we also don't have a clear indication of how many were strictly on Amazon Prime too, right?
Right. That was just on Twitch, right? So we had
Yeah.
Twitch, Amazon Prime. I don't think it was on socials, but it was definitely millions of people locked in, even though it was at that late hour. They sold a bunch of merch. A lot of people was their t-shirts were like $200 and hoodies $400. Like, and that I think was to benefit the cause. But one weird thing is that neither one of them mentioned Larry Hoover on stage. Ye had on a hoodie saying "Free Hoover." Drake wore something on the back. It had "Freed the Mandem." Because Drake does that thing.
Yeah.
Why do you think they didn't mention Larry Hoover on stage?
I'm really, really curious. Like, I wonder if that was an Amazon thing. I wonder if that was some stipulation, but I don't know. I mean, there was no, I expected, sort of like the drink champs with Kanye, they brought Larry Hoover Jr., came in and spoke about his father at length, especially in the second half of that. And I thought there would be some kind of, I say it respectfully, but like grandstanding, and there was none of that. This was straight up concert. So maybe they did it for the exact reason of like, here we are talking about it. But I also wondered if, the powers that be, because Larry Hoover is a convicted, inmate accused of murder, or convicted of murder, I should say, if that made it tricky at all. But you wouldn't think that would be the one deal point. I don't know. You have more experience with those.
Yeah, I mean, they got his name plastered all over themselves, so there was definitely a presence. And the video had the hashtag Free Larry Hoover.
That's the bottom.
It couldn't have been an issue with sponsorship, but it's so strange. It's very strange to me that neither one of them mentioned him. I think, I think it was Drake mentioned Larry Hoover Jr. But didn't mention Larry Hoover. It's just very strange to me. But so you wrote the article. So before we get into the on again, off again war that Drake and Kanye have been having, let's talk about the recent piece. You wrote that article. You wrote that for us. Like, can you break that down? How
you
that
mean
happened?
the drink champs?
And the article, where they were showing photographs together, and who brokered that?
Yeah, in November, there was a week where Dave Chappelle performed in Toronto, Ontario, which quite obviously is Drake's backyard. He has a palatial mansion there, and Kanye went up, and there was two photographs, each posted on one another's Instagram, respectively. I think Kanye put up the one of Dave Chappelle, Drake, and Ye, and it was a short little video. It was just very. I think they did that to provide context. It wasn't like, hey, let's squeeze together for a quick photo and push apart. And then on Drake's page, and I hope I have this right, it was Drake, Kanye, and Jay Prince. And Jay Prince is very much the third party here. I think, Jay Prince, for hip hop, people will know him as the founder of Rap-A-Lot Records. Jay Prince is a really interesting figure and somebody that I've always wanted to interview. I've come close a few times. Justin Hunt, our comrade at AFH and dear friend, has interviewed Jay. It's James Prince. But yeah, I mean, he started, truly one of the Blueprint independent labels with Rap-A-Lot, and founded it, I believe, in 1986. Label goes on to introduce the Ghetto Boys, in the second lineup with, Willie D, Scarface, Bushwick Bill, kind of becomes the juggernaut to bring attention to Houston rap. And throughout the time and the years that followed, Scarface becomes, for a lot of people, a GOAT MC. And Rap-A-Lot became, a home for a lot of the rappers in Houston. But over time, and this is where I think Chicago ties into it, Jay Prince, who, as far as I know, and I've read his book, he's never publicly affiliated himself to any street organization, but yet he is, and I think it's safe to say, like, one of the most respected and feared individuals in all of music and in all of street culture. Jay Prince is international. So over time, Rap-A-Lot had made these, they'd picked up artists in different places, street artists that had represented the struggle. And out of Chicago, they got Do or Die, which was, I believe, a trio out of the west side of Chicago. They've always, been good there. They got artists out of LA, they got artists out of the Bay, Memphis, so on and so forth. And over time, Jay has little by little stepped further away from music. He put the company in the hands of, his sons. He got into boxing for a while. He was making condoms for a while. Now he's into publishing, all of these different things. But where he comes back into music is his son Jazz is credited with discovering Drake. And obviously, discovering is a weird word with somebody like Drake. Drake was, a teen actor, Degrassi, had always had musical ambitions. But in 2008, I think with Drake's style, he was this independent guy making, what was the mixtape Comeback Season?
Yeah. Yep.
He was making joints like that. I mean, he hadn't gotten to the point where he was starting to work with, Little Brother and stuff like that, but he was making noise. And Jazz finds him, I believe, on MySpace, if I have the story right. And Jazz was on tour with Lil Wayne, and presents Drake's music to Lil Wayne that eventually, I think it's fair to call it a brokering of bringing Drake to Young Money. And a lot of people have asked, if they believe so strongly, why didn't Drake go to Rap a Lot? And Drake, I've heard Jay Prince say this, I've heard Jazz Prince say this, they felt that at that time, the late 2000s, Cash Money was the best possible place for an artist of that magnitude. And Lil Wayne had this ability to really, kind of flick the switch for somebody. And he did that for Drake, later make Nicki Minaj and, a host of other people, but it worked. And since that time, Jay Prince has always kind of been in the business, and he worked really hard to get Jazz Prince and presumably himself paid when Drake had a royalty dispute with, Birdman and his brother Slim and all of that. And Jay Prince has always been around. Drake has credited him as a mentor. So to advance the ball a little bit, when Kanye and when Pusha T and Drake went at it at their hardest in 2018, with the Daytona album and the Scorpion album, enter Jay Prince. Because things escalated quickly. And we reported a lot of this on AFH. I think we covered kind of every beat of the story. Jay Prince comes in and says, both of you stand down. He tells Kanye, get out of this because Drake has the ability to end your career. That was
let's get into that though, because just to remind people, so Pusha T and Drake have been beefing for a long time. I think Pusha in part has been a proxy for Kanye, as far as, but they have their own like individual things too, but definitely his affiliation with Kanye has stoked things. But so we go back, Pusha T releases his album. He has a song called Infrared on it. And he goes at Drake. He stokes the fires about Drake not writing his own material. Something that Meek Mill broke. Drake has been in a lot of beefs over the years. One of which was with Meek Mill, when Meek Mill decided for whatever reason to leak the fact that Drake had been using a ghostwriter, Quentin Miller, in his material. Huge thing because Drake, was getting, GOAT consideration from people. And as an MC, if you're not writing your own material, then it takes you down a bit. People like consider you more of a pop star rather than a rapper. So Pusha T goes back and kind of pokes at Drake for that. Drake comes back with a song called Duppy Freestyle, and goes at Pusha and brings Kanye into the conversation too, and talks about how he's been the guy who's actually helped to fuel some of their hits. And before you question his pen game, think about how he's contributed to their success. Can
I add one thing though?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, so that Infrared joint closes out Daytona. The entire album is produced by Kanye West. Kanye produces a song a Pusha song that disses Drake. And during that time, even though things had been a bit strained between Drake and Kanye publicly, they sat in studios together. Kanye was privy to some of what Drake was doing with Scorpion. If I understand correctly, Kanye's solo album, I guess it would have been Ye. Drake comes to Wyoming. And I might not have that 100% right, but they were in rooms together. And then only to find out that Kanye supplies Pusha with this song. And, Pusha has kind of been the person eating popcorn on the side, coming up with clever tweets and, freestyles and remixes over the years that have poked fun at Drake, and their beef has very much been a hand-me-down from Pusha's longstanding beef with Lil Wayne, longstanding beef with Birdman. All of it's all family trees. But and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it's important to note that at this juncture, Kanye comes in and makes a record, knows about a record that truly goes for Drake's jugular. But I think what you're about to say is it wasn't even the nastiest or the most scathing record. That came within a few days after that.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into all this. Like, this is gonna be, we're gonna really dig deep into this. But yes, so Drake responds with Duppy Freestyle to Infrared, and then a couple days later, Pusha T comes with the Coup de Grace, a song called The Story of Adidan. And he's got, as the cover to support the record, he's got a picture of Drake in blackface. Drake had been in blackface for some role, but he looks absolutely crazy in this picture, and it's not Photoshop. It's a real picture of Drake looking absolutely insane. And that's not even the worst of it. During the song, Pusha T reveals to the world that Drake has a son that he is not like publicly claimed at that point. And, talks about like him being a deadbeat dad and like being ashamed of his son and things like that. So he reveals to the world that Drake has a son, which is insane, right? So on top of just how like high stakes that is, it also ruined a sponsorship deal that Drake had with Adidas, because he was rolling out a line, really based on his son. He was going to announce his son. He had recorded a song that addressed the entire situation, what happened. March 14th is the song on Scorpion, and played that for Kanye. Kanye heard that in advance, gave the information to Pusha. Pusha used it against Drake and rolled it out and like blew up so much stuff. But we're going to get into that. All that to say that after all this, Jay Prince steps in and brokers peace. And to your point, he said that Drake could have come back with a song that ended Kanye's career, maybe Pusha T's as well. Like, I'm skeptical that, like, to end someone's career. Like, what? I mean, what? If that's the case, then they're holding on to some serious stuff. And Jay Prince, being who he is, like you said, very feared. Who knows? Like, Drake might have something on Kanye, or the whole like Jay Prince camp that could end Ye's career. So back then, and this is like 2018, something like that, like Jay Prince brokers a peace between these two guys who are going at each other with real high stakes disses. This is not, it's not gunplay, but it's also not just words on wax. It's stuff that is really affecting people's lives and careers. Fast forward to 2021, Drake and Kanye are going at it all summer long, and we're going to break that down. But suddenly in November, when Kanye appears on Drink Champs, he says that he and Drake are going to do a joint event, for Larry Hoover, doesn't get into it. And then all of a sudden you see the three of them, Jay Prince, Drake, and Kanye together. I think it was on some stairs or something like that, in a very iconic photo. When you look at it, it's a powerful photo. So once again, he steps in and brokers a peace between these guys. Now, you and I have spoken about this in the last couple of weeks. Given the on again, off again nature of their relationship, we wondered whether or not this piece would survive. How long it would go, and I think we both speculated that it probably would swing the other way again. It swung the other way again in a completely unexpected way on that night, and I don't think anyone caught this. And like I said, real time, I didn't catch it either. But wow. Okay, but before we get into that, let's talk about the event itself, and let's talk about the coverage of the event. So, and you've scanned the space and seen it. What was your opinion of, like, what things were the highlights that were covered for you?
Of the event?
Yeah.
Just a rundown of, the big story was each artist kind of did another artist's song, which is not something I saw coming, to be honest with you. And I think a lot of people wanted to see what the optics would look like. For me, up until Thursday night, I thought this was an equal billing show. And then Thursday night kind of proved to be, this is a Kanye with special guest Drake concert. And I feel like the amount of stage time and the order of things kind of supports that. I did not anticipate that. But yeah, I mean, what I saw in the media space was kind of coverage that had happened, and there was nothing overly salacious out of it. No special guests of the show. So, usually that sometimes is the low hanging fruit of, so and so brought out so and so. But yeah, there was none of that. And also, I mean, we're in, and this happens every year. We kind of enter holiday mode, and I feel that a lot of the publications kind of just play on their heels instead of their feet. And to your point, with what you saw, and we'll talk about it, really has gone unnoticed.
Right.
But
So
yeah, I mean, I didn't see any grabbing huge narrative. Did you?
yeah, there are a couple, right? So the biggest story was the fact that it happened at all. These two guys who are two of the biggest stars on the planet are coming together, first of all. Secondly, the fact that they've been warring and they squashed their beef in order to come together for this was a big narrative. And that played out in a few ways during the show. They walked out together. They walked jointly down the stairs. I gotta say, it wasn't like overly like affectionate, for lack of a better word. They weren't like arm in arm and like high fiving and stuff like that. But when Drake came on during the set, he did embrace Kanye. They hugged briefly. Drake said when we were walking through the archway, it felt surreal to be on stage with one of my idols as he runs through his catalog. So he's complimentary. Like you said, they performed each other's songs. Kanye performs Find Your Love by Drake, and Drake performs Kanye's 24, which by the way was incredible. Like to me, it sounded like even better than Kanye's version.
But time out. One second there, because you said a lot right there. And you're absolutely right. The thing that went through my mind watching it, we watched Drake and Meek Mill do a big embrace, and I believe it took place in Boston when they kind of made peace after, a damn near career-ending attempt on Meek's part. And I don't care who you are. I've seen a few people here in Philadelphia that think Meek may have had the upper hand. I've never listened to a credible source say that. Drake danced his way out of that and really, excuse me, put Meek down a few knocks with two incredible diss records before Meek could even get to this diss record that he was touting. That being said, when they pieced it up on stage, it was a moment, like all cameras out. And when I'm watching, Drake and Kanye take this epic walk, and we'll talk about the production value of the lights and the smoke and the colors, all amazing. But when they finally make a public gesture together, it reminded me a lot of two athletes that really are bitter rivals, and that after the game, like dap and keep it moving. Like when Drake puts out his hand to Kanye, he's already headed the other direction. And I'm not making too much of that, I don't think, because I noticed it. I'm like, body language is everything. And what kind of taught me something else is that when Kanye is performing Find Your Love, Drake's record that he was very much a part of, the cool thing was they showed Drake on the side of the stage going nuts. Like he's in his bag enjoying Kanye doing that. And that let me know, because in a way I was like, like, why did Kanye choose this record to cover? Like, what's he saying? Is he kind of positioning himself as somebody who early on pushed Drake in the light? Is it a record? Is it? My mind wonders of things, but it was really cool to see Drake so on board with that cover.
Yeah, you're right. Like even at the end, right? Like say you would expect them to dap each other, like embrace again, like yo, but
create the moment.
Yeah, there was a brief second, and literally like 1 second, where Drake kind of put his arm around Kanye for a second and then dropped it, and then after that they just walked down separately. Then they walked a while, then they split. There was no like, yo man, great job, glad we did this, or anything like that. The energy was not one of two guys who had put things to the side and really come together in unity. And your point about Meek Mill is interesting too, because Meek Mill did things that really damaged Drake's career for a while. He really undermined his credibility as an artist. And Drake was able to forgive that. Now, the interesting thing is the timing. So Kanye, Drake, and Pusha-T are at war and really high stakes. And it's right around that time that Drake starts making peace with his former foes. So he makes peace with Meek Mill. He makes peace with Chris Brown, right? And the two of them have been involved in an altercation that escalated into complete mayhem at a club in New York, where they're throwing bottles at each other in a bar, and like it's a full-on brawl. in this club, presumably over Rihanna back in the day. So Drake has been in his fair share of scuffles. He made peace with Joe Budden at this time too, and I think Diddy as well. It was almost like he couldn't be in too many wars. Like at a certain point, like if you're in too many wars, like you're gonna go because the attacks are coming from all sides. So during this time where he's in this, war with Kanye, he starts to squash things. So okay, another narrative that came out was that Kim Kardashian was in attendance, and the two of them, even though they're splitting, have been spotted publicly together quite a bit. They've been supportive of each other in each other's events. And Kanye performed "Runaway," and he changed the line to say, "I need you to run right back to me," more specifically, Kimberly. Like so. He's been publicly campaigning as he did on Drink Champs to win Kim back, and so that was another narrative that I saw too. But aside from that, wasn't much more.
Yeah, no, and that's interesting too. And I did see that there's always anything that involves Kim Kardashian West is gonna make the news. And yeah, I mean, just because I don't think that's a highlight point of our discussion, it's very interesting to me that Kanye would choose to be vulnerable. Obviously, Kanye is a genius and he knows that this is, more than the Drink Champs video interview. This is going to be an all eyes on him moment. So of course he's going to do it. It's in LA, it's in his backyard. But interesting part of the narrative is Drake has allegedly made things challenging between him and Kim at times, and when Jay Prince was wagering and saying that Drake had this record in the tuck, I always assumed it had to do with Kim. I thought it was very much out of the playbook of Tupac and Faith Evans, regardless of what it meant. Kanye on Drink Champ said that Drake plays psychological warfare. He buys a house down the street, and then, on Travis Scott's record, talks about the specific coordinates and make a left, make a right to see your house. Like Drake is a sniper, and we've talked about it. And we're going to talk about it some more because it very much plays into things. But knowing that, it's wild that Kanye did run away that way, and I thought that was a very vulnerable, interesting point at the concert.
So that's a perfect segue. So now let's get to the main event. They're on stage together, doing their concert. For Kanye, it's like it's almost like like a tribute, like to himself, and that he is going through all of his hits. It's like an all-star, like, let me show you my catalog. It's almost like a versus for him. Like he's going through everything, just pulling out joints. But before we get into let's revisit and set the table for the beat, because people aren't going to understand this until they really understand the context. So you talk about Kanye performing "Runaway." I believe that song was initially done for Amber Rose. It was My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. It's in the period where Kanye is breaking up with Amber, but also meeting Kim. So there's blurriness there. And it's actually around this time that things went south for Kanye and Drake. So Kanye had been dating Amber Rose for a few years. They split. And a few months later, something like 3 months after they split up in 2010, Drake is spotted out with Amber Rose. And, before that, it'd been all love. Kanye had directed the Best I Ever Had video. Drake had been, openly, effusive about like how much he admired Kanye and his catalog and things like that. It was all love. Yeah. But things took a turn after that. And, we talked about the real stakes that happened where people's careers were impacted negatively. Money was lost. You talked about this briefly, but so during the period when they were hanging out and Drake was working with Kanye in a studio in Wyoming, Drake had initially planned for Scorpion to come out in June of that year. I think it was 2018, something like that. And Kanye, knowing what Drake's release date was, decided to create his own kind of tentpole moment and release 5 albums in 5 weeks. It was him, Kid Cudi, and Nas, Tiana Taylor, and Pusha, right? So 5 records, 5 albums, 5 weeks, 7 songs each. And coincidentally, they happen to step all over Drake's intended release date in that June. Drake has to move back his Scorpion album, which is a big deal because, these things, they seem like they happen quickly, but labels have been working on marketing plans and rollout and stuff like that, spending lots of money to prepare for release dates. So if you have to move that, it's a gigantic thing and it costs a ton of money. It wastes the efforts that's been made to like make people aware of it. It's a big deal. So this wasn't like something small on top. And we'll talk about that a little bit too. So Pusha drops Infrared, to like add salt to the wound. Like they step on his release date and then they release a diss record. And then they get into Story of Adidon and Drake says that Kanye deliberately sabotaged his release date and, fed Pusha T his info. So,
jump in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jump in too. I mean, Drake's best statements on this were sitting on the shop with LeBron James. And when Drake speaks about it, it is like speaking about the most angering thing in your life. Because again, I mean, you're talking about release dates, but what you said earlier about you're outing my son. Like, to me, hip hop and rap, we've seen years and years and years of dissing your girl or saying this, and and Pusha that dealt with that. Pusha's justification was that Drake had said a line that had referred to his fiance at the time, now wife, and that made him see red, and he went all in. But you're dealing with families, and Pusha also went at Drake's mom. I mean, hard, like rough, and this, Jay Prince called it a pig pen. I mean, things had gotten really sloppy, and absolutely. So Drake goes on the shop and says that Kanye betrayed him, and we have a great article on AFH that covers all of the quotes and links to all the things that he's referring to, and then boom, Pusha T blames it not on Kanye as the go-between, but blames it on 40. Drake's longtime creative partner, his producer, his partner at OVO. And he says that 40 kind of discussed some of this stuff with a woman as some pillow talk that then leaked the information to Good. So that only escalates things further. And very clearly, these two camps are seeing each other as very serious, not just rivals, but enemies,
Yeah. And so Jay Prince comes in, brokers the peace. And Drake doesn't release that diss song that Jay Prince has claims that he has tucked, but it's not like truly a piece because there are sneak disses that are happening over the years, and we'll talk about some of those. But for whatever reason, like the armistice is called off over the summer, and these guys are openly warring against one another once again, and so Kanye is releasing his album, Drake is releasing his album, and it's almost like a chess match as to who's going to release whose albums first. And we see this play out in Kanye like saying, okay, my album's coming out today. He does big listening event, and then all of a sudden the album doesn't come. And people attribute some of that to Kanye's obsessiveness with like perfection, wanting the album to be exactly right, which is part of it too. But there's also speculation that he's delaying his album because he wants to like either go head to head or after Drake. And, and so this happens like 3 times. Kanye like does the pump fake, says album's coming, doesn't come. Third time is right around Drake's release date. Drake releases his album, and then 2 days later, Kanye releases his album, right? So, and in between, there are real disses again. So Drake, does something, and then Kanye comes back and releases Drake's address publicly. He puts up a post on social media with Drake's address, which is absolutely insane. We know that fans do a lot of wild things. They're stalkers out there. It's a dangerous thing, but he releases this man's address, right? And then Drake comes back and he releases his song 7 a.m. on Bridal Path, where he talks about their entire feud and like really goes after Kanye in that, and even specifically addresses you put out my address. He then leaks a song featuring Andre 3000 that was supposed to be on Kanye's album before it comes. This is money, right? These guys are actually like putting each other's lives like in jeopardy and like taking money off the table and exposing family and things like that. This is not just words. They're not shooting again, but but they're doing real high stakes things. And then in September, Swiss Beats says in an interview that Kanye wanted to battle Drake on verses, but Drake wasn't with the smoke. So
Kanye later confirms as much on Drink Champs.
Yeah.
They ask him.
Yeah. So that month, so November, Kanye confirms that. And more importantly, and you talked about this earlier, he talks about the psychological warfare that Drake wages on people, and that it's subtle and ongoing. It is not like a short-term thing. So before, and this is all like, just context to get into how this played out on the stage that night. So he says, and I'm going to read this because I don't want to like twist words. I don't want to editorialize. I don't want people to think that we're making something out of nothing. So he says, Drake doesn't do a diss song where it's an outright headshot. He's going to set it up like war. When people went to go get Hitler, they didn't go straight for him. They set up fake tanks. They set up, other things. Drake is going to do stuff like live 5 blocks from down the street from you, DM every single girl in your family, every single girl around your family, all your guys, girls. Like he's saying, this is Kanye saying this, right? Like this is like, it sounds insane, but over the years, if you listen to Joe Budden, and he also mixed it up with Drake. Drake dropped a diss song about him that got leaked before it was released, and then Budden came back before disses, and they had their thing. But he talks about how strategic and how Drake plays chess in these things. And you talked about Meek Mill, like so Meek leaks that Drake is got a ghostwriter, so he drops not one diss song, but then comes back with a second one back to back, and like basically like puts Meek Mill out of commission. He uses memes. Drake is a master at like waging warfare on people. Like he I think the Meek diss, he talked about he was going to have to send like bottles to Charlemagne, who's also been a foe. And the next day after he dropped the song, he actually sent champagne to like the Breakfast Club for Charlemagne. So he's super strategic about this stuff. There is nothing accidental. There's nothing that is by chance. So Kanye goes on, he says, it's all psychological. What button is someone going to hit? Like I was just at the game with Jay Prince, who we talked about last night. He was talking about how many below the belts there were, meaning below the belts between, Kanye and Drake in their war. And then Kanye says, I bit his ear. And what he's talking about is the fight between Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield, which is like infamous now because Mike Tyson literally bit off a piece of Evander Holyfield's ear. But people saw that and they think Tyson is crazy. And it wasn't until, weeks later that it came out that Evander had been headbutting Mike Tyson throughout. And, that can cost a fight. That can open up a wound. Like actually, I think Tyson was bleeding because of that. Yeah. And the ref wasn't seeing the headbutting. So Evander was like, I'm going to take it in my own hands, and so he bit his ear after like, multiple headbutts. But Tyson is the one who's labeled as crazy. And the one who gets caught, it's always the person who punches second that gets caught, not the person who punches first. So he goes on and says, I bit his ear. They ain't seen what Holyfield was doing. Tyson was telling the refs, yo, you ain't see this? You ain't see this? Tyson was like, I'm going to take this into my own hands. So this is what Kanye is saying is that he has to do. That's why he released, his address and seems to be doing all these aggressive things because Drake has been doing all this subtle, passive aggressive and or sneak aggressive things to Kanye over the years. There's rumors that he's like trying to kick it to Kim. He clearly was kicking it with Amber like back in the day. So there are lots of things that are below the belt hits that Kanye is responding to. But because he's the first to do it publicly, he's the one that seems like the villain. Okay, so all that context is to say that Drake is the king of sneak disses. We've seen it in multiple songs. He disses Jay-Z, he disses Budden. Like, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think of the Budden thing. They had their run-ins, and throughout the year, I mean, obviously, throughout the years, obviously Joe Budden and Rory and Mal have since separated. But for years, when Drake wouldn't respond to Joe, or he would maybe like a text but not respond when they were going between, he would reach out to Rory. He would comment on Rory's Instagram post. It was documented on the show. And I look at it and I equate it to almost like a Shakespearean villain. Like, I am literally going to unwind you by making inroads to your lady, to people around you, your associates. I mean, over the years, yeah, Drake will do that. You and I speculated, what it must do to Kanye West that Drake is working with Kid Cudi all of a sudden. And those two have had history in the past. But yeah, I mean, him and Jay-Z, work together all of these times, but then there might be one shot. I mean, Jay responded on the Future record on Khaled's album. I remember that was a big story for us. But yeah, I mean, it's just very, very calculated, close moves. And I think that Drake, I wouldn't call him a villain. I wouldn't call it, but he operates in a way that we don't see. Rap is not often about subtlety. It's about, bull in the china shop when it comes to dissing. And Drake is quite the opposite. It kind of reminds me of, people point to the places where, Rakim and Kane were getting at each other. It reminds me of that, because you literally have to go into the lyrics to look and equate, and it's never going to be the thing you think it is. How many times did you hear that Travis Scott record before you realized what Drake was talking about? It took Kanye to break that down for it to make sense to me.
Again, using Kanye's words, Drake don't do a diss song where it's an outright headshot. He's going to set it up like war. Yeah. So in a non-judgmental term, I'm going to say Drake is a mastermind. Like, he uses strategy, and there are multiple components to it. So that being said, let's talk about what happened during this concert. So Kanye treats it like a greatest hits like night. It's like an all-star kind of like tribute. I'm gonna read his track list because it's important to like get a sense of like what he's doing. So he does Praise God, but then Jesus Walks, All Falls Down, Gold Digger, Touch the Sky, Stronger, All the Lights, Black Skinhead, All Day, Mercy, Good Life, Flashing Lights, Say You Will, I Wonder, Find Your Love by Drake, Runaway, and Can't Tell Me Nothing. So that's how he starts, right? And that is like covering like the entirety of his catalog. He even like has Jesus. He's going into it. Afterwards, he comes back after Drake's performance and does Hurricane, Father Stretch My Hands, Paris, Ends in Paris, Bound to, and Come to Life. So he's really covering the entirety of his career. Now, Drake, on the other hand, does 12 songs. Now, it was in this preparation that I started to actually piece together what happened, right? So I'm thinking this is a really weird set from Drake, because he's doing a fair amount of his new stuff. So I'm like, okay, cool. He's promoting his new album. That makes sense. But then he's got other songs in there too that aren't the new album. And, he's not playing any of his hits. And Drake is a guy, he plays one Kanye cover. He does 24, and I'm sure they both agreed to do a cover of each other's song in advance. 6 songs from Certified Lover Boy. And Certified Lover Boy is a 21-song project. So it wasn't even the most popular songs from the project. So why does he choose these 6 out of the 21? So I'm thinking that, right? And then there's God's Plan, Wants and Needs, Laugh Now, Cry Later, What's Next, and Life is Good. So this guy has 258 songs that have charted. 258. That's the most in anyone's in music history. 258. So out of 258, he chooses these 6. Now, he has 54 songs that have been in the top 10. This guy could, and Kanye himself says, it's like 100 million hits between the both of us. We'll have you out here for 3 days. Like Kanye says this, right? So Drake has a catalog where he could have done 258 charted songs. That's not even the entirety of his catalog. 54 top 10 songs, or 21 songs from Certified Lover Boy. Yet he chooses a specific 12 songs. I'm going to say right now that Drake dissed Kanye West throughout his entire set in front of the world and no one noticed. I bet you Kanye noticed. And I bet you that's why they walked off the stage the way that they did. Kind of like, not like arm in arm. Drake puts his arm around him for a second, like, yeah, I got you. and Kanye, like, and then they walk part. They don't even say goodbye to each other, right? Like, so I guarantee you that Kanye caught this, but I haven't seen it covered anywhere. And so let's dig into it. People are going to think that we're trying to stir things up. I hope we've done like a decent job at setting up the context now and the history between these guys and using Kanye's own words to state how Drake does things. And people can look up Budden and all this. He's a chess player, right? So let's go through his set. Wants and Needs is from Scary Hours 2. So he performs Kanye's 24. And then he goes into Wants and Needs. And he doesn't perform the full song. He just does like a little bit. And some of the words from that song are, I should probably go link with Yeezy. I need me some Jesus. But as soon as I started confessing my sins, he wouldn't believe us. So he's already setting the stage saying, I'm gonna link with Kanye and, but he's not going to believe what I'm saying because he really knows like, how it goes. And it says, sins, I got sins in my mind and some M's, got a lot of M's in my mind. And my friends, I keep my friends in my mind. And he says, but he keeps stressing that, I got my friends in my mind. That's the refrain of it. And he says, I need me some Jesus in my life. Amen. And the next song he goes into after that refrain about friends is no friends in the industry.
This is where your theory started to really kind of crystallize with me.
Right. So he starts off talking about friends, but then he says there's no friends in the industry and friends and linking it to Kanye, but Kanye's not going to believe what I'm saying anyway. And you know what? He's right, because there's no friends in the industry. Now, so I'm going to just use lyrics. I want the words that these guys say to speak for themselves, right? Yeah. So he says, no friends in the industry. My brother's been my brother's man. You ends ain't no kin to me. A fact. He says, I was known for snapping when I chat before the app, stood on everything I said and never took it back. No friends in the industry. I had to draw the line between my brothers and my enemies. A fact. Dudes love to start the beef. Don't want to keep it wrapped. Yeah, you hit us up and now we owe you something back. Now, given the context we talked about, the beef that they had did not stay to wax. It did not stay to rap. It spilled over into real life. There were consequences that affected not only these artists, but family members, business relationships, the whole nine. Again, he says, dudes love to start the beef. Don't want to keep it to rap. Yeah, hit us up and now we owe you something back. Okay. He's saying this on stage in the middle of a Kanye concert during a set, right? And he says, see, when I was young, Angel, but these, and I'm not going to say the N word, term me evil. Yeah, I know you, but you really ain't my people. Yeah, I heard some people say they know him as my equal. These guys have been like waging war. Who's better? Who's what? They know him as my equal. Truth be told, I son these dudes, girl. I don't compete with them. Okay. Now, during the middle of their beef in 2018, Drake was like, listen, like, I give you guys hits. You're going to talk about my pen game, but I give you guys hits. Like, you're not my equal. He's talked in the past about having a bigger pool than Kanye. Like, the competition between these guys has been discussed at length. You can look on the site. You can see there's years and years and words talking about
that. Pool comment was over 5 years ago, and yeah, right. It's ongoing. Yeah,
that was summer 16. That was summer 16. Literally the song. So this sounds to me like an exact reference to what Drake discussed with LeBron James on The Shop. And you talked about this earlier, but I think it's important again to use these guys' words so people don't think that we're editorializing and stirring up something that's not there. So on The Shop, Drake says to LeBron James, I ended up linking with, Kanye. He sold me on this whole speech of like, I'm in a great place. I'm making money and I'm a father. I want to be Quincy Jones and help you. But in order to do that, you've got to be transparent with me and you've got to play me your music. You've got to tell me when you're dropping your album. And I don't know, and I know you don't do like to do things like that. So I was in the studio. My team and I all kind of felt, a genuine vibe from it. He's, saying he felt a genuine vibe from Kanye. So I played him my music and I told him I was dropping. I also send him a picture of my son. Now, again, this is before anyone in the world knows that Drake has a son. He sends Kanye a picture of his son. I tell him I'm having trouble with my son's mother. He's getting into all sorts of like life stuff, right? Like this is not like on some superficial industry stuff. This is like, I'm going to tell you real things that are going on in my life. I'm opening myself up to you. So I tell him I'm having trouble with my son's mother. We had a conversation. I shared my life. Now in April of that year, Kanye West announced the 5 consecutive albums he was producing. We talked about that. Less than a week before Drake announced his Scorpion release date. So, he had to move his album. The consecutive Fridays included June 15th, which was Drake's intended release date for Scorpion. And then several days later, Kanye texted Drake a friendly message that same day. Now, Kanye released a song called Lift Yourself, a version of it, where he was just like mumbling, right? He was just saying nonsense. And we covered it and we were like, yo, this dude is, what is this? Like, what
He's
is
trolling us?
No, we're like, yo, is Kanye, like literally we thought maybe he was off his meds again because he was it seemed really erratic, right? But Drake provides the context, right? So the interesting thing is that Kanye is the one who accuses Drake of doing all this like passive aggressive stuff and things in the background. But clearly Kanye is doing the same thing, right? It's like, a turnabout is fair play. They're both doing this. So of Lift Yourself, Drake says it was just him talking nonsense. I'm like, and this is a song that he had worked on extensively with Kanye in the studio. There are lyrics, Drake has contributed, the whole nine. But he releases this nonsensical version. He says, oh, it was just him talking nonsense. I'm like, oh, this guy's trolling me. This was like a manipulative, I want to break you thing, says Drake, who was, he says, I said, all right, I'm going to go back to distance myself again. I know what this is. So Drake opens with a song about linking with Ye, right? And saying that Ye wouldn't believe him if he confessed his sins. And then immediately goes into a song saying he has no friends in the industry and makes a reference that sounds like it's exactly addressing the situation that happened with him and Kanye. So coincidence?
Not at all. And you know what I read, Reggie, that it was an interview that I saw in real time. Jay Prince went on Big Boy's Neighborhood, and he said that in order to broker this concert, he needed to bring Drake to Kanye without Drake understanding that Kanye is there. So again, full context, put yourself in Drake's shoes. You have somebody that you credit as a mentor, somebody who is very respected and very feared in the industry, that has a vested interest and an obligation to Larry Hoover, senior and junior, and Kanye has history with Larry Hoover senior and junior, and they want to use this moment, and you kind of feel obligated. So just full context, well, they might have pieced it up. They put it both on their Instagrams. On Drake's, you have Jay Prince there. It just shows you that this wasn't necessarily the most organic or mystis. There's other powers that be in here. There's other forces at play. So if you're Drake, okay, I'll do your concert. I'm going to do X amount of songs. Oh, you're doing the concert Kanye West with special guest Drake? Okay, I'll do your 12 songs. I'll pick the songs. And I'm speculating, but it just starts to make so much sense why he would surgically do these records.
Body blow, headbutt. So, he goes from wants and needs where he's talking about linking with Ye, but on terms where he's not going to really believe that, there's peace, and goes into no friends in this industry. And then what's next? Actually, the song, What's Next? Now, we talk about, how Drake has positioned himself, with exes, with friends and things like that in order to disrupt you. He's not just going to come at you. These are Kanye's words. He's going to come at your friends. He's going to come at your loved ones and use that relationship against you. So What's Next is a song where he does a salute to Virgil Abloh, rest in peace. Like really, really tragically we lost Virgil. But Virgil and Kanye were not on great terms, like toward the end. Like, Kanye acknowledged it. And on that Drink Champs, he talks about how he was jealous of Virgil, getting his position with Louis Vuitton. Like, he thought that that's a position he should have had. And, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. I mean, at one point in the interview, and it's on AFH, Kanye says how he feels as though he's been replaced. ASAP Rocky's the better dresser, Virgil's the better designer. I think he credits Kendrick as the better rapper. He mentions J. Cole as well. And he kind of says, but watch, and he opened up and said that he felt it should have been him to at least been offered the position with Louis Vuitton. And what was really interesting is, we got word that Virgil had passed on a Sunday. And the most recent thing that Kanye had said about Virgil was kind of, a little bit of jealousy or envy, call it what you want. And then it comes to the light via TMZ that sources close to Kanye West say that he was aware of Virgil's cancer for some time, which is wild to me because Drink Champs had taped very shortly before that ran. So if I know that you are, terminally ill, I'm going to measure my words with a lot of care if I'm speaking with you, especially at the differences of our relationship, because we're on borrowed time. And it's wild to me. And I'm not here to speculate that Kanye did or didn't know, but isn't it strange that the last public thing he said before the funeral about Virgil was that he felt as though his accomplishment should have belonged to him?
And not just that, he also talks about putting Virgil, Drake, Kid Cudi, and Saha the Prince and someone else and maybe Kim on a joint text where he talks about like how, he basically was responsible for all their success and how they owe him, like, so like super petty stuff. Like, and this is Kanye's word. This is not our speculation. These are words that he said during that Drink Champs. So he's making it very clear that not only are things not good with Virgil, but he's linking him with Drake and all these people. There's real context there, right? So now Drake goes from a song about Lincoln with Ye to No Friends in its industry to a song talking about Virgil, and not just about Virgil. On its face, it looks like it's a salute, a tribute to him, who just passed. But the lines that he uses are about a watch. And he says, Virgil got one, and that there is the only of two. He's talking about a watch that only he and Virgil Abloh have in the world. So he's saying, look, this was your man, but he and I were much closer than you were. And so, that's like, that's something that's kind of petty. That's crazy.
Yeah. And it comes, Kanye opens the show kind of doing like a Motown 25. He's playing the hits. He's going almost through every album, I think with the exception of 808s, up until that point, he's dancing around his classic catalog. And what Kanye doesn't do is any grandstanding. He takes the moment with Runaway to kind of, ask for Kim back, but there's no moment for Virgil, So Drake, even performing that, is acknowledging something very meaningful that has happened in both of their lives, and he's doing it first. And I think what we can all speculate is Kanye is the kind of guy, he likes to plant the flag. He likes to have the moment. This was his concert. So again, to your point, as you start to kind of put together the mosaics, I think it's a calculated move.
So 258 songs charted, 54 top 10, 21 on Certified Lover Boy. Why these 12 songs and why in this order? So first of all, Lincoln with Ye, but it's not real. Secondly, No Friends in This Industry. Thirdly, your guy who you used to, like count as one of your guys is like actually was closer to me. Next song is Life is Good. Again, I'm going to use Drake's lyrics. He says, and swear they passed us. They doing too much. Ends caught me slipping once. Okay, so what? So clearly Kanye caught Drake slipping, when Drake was spilling his life to him, right? Like, this is not like far-fetched. It's not like we're digging. Someone hit your block up. I tell you if it was us. Now, the context there is that there were a lot of robberies going on in Calabasas at the time. And you can look this up. And I believe that Kanye's house was affected. Yeah, I'm not sure, but and Drake, coincidentally moved into Calabasas. This is what Kanye is referring to about how he moved into your neighborhood, like literally 5 houses down, like so. And he says, He says, ends got to move off my release day. Like, these are like direct things addressing their history, you know. And he says, Virgil got a paddock on my wrist going nuts again. You know, he's talking about Virgil, and he ends with that. He repeats that refrain a couple of times, you know. And then, okay, so next song, I Am Y2, is a song with Kid Cudi. Now, we just said Kid Cudi was on that text. And you want to talk about like Kid Cudi and Kanye's relationship and how that's morphed over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the deep specifics of it, but obviously, you know, Kanye is credited as Kid Cudi's mentor, but also Cudi fans will tell you that a lot of Kanye's style around 808s and Heartbreak, and after that, you know, it was one of those things, and I think this sort of parallels what happened with Travis Scott later. Kanye brings in these artists, he produces them, he helps them a lot, but you can arguably say that he sponges off of, you know, some of their originality, perhaps. And Kanye's blending of melody and melancholy and kind of, you know, woe is me with really interesting production. There's a direct comparison there. And, you know, Ye has had an in the picture, out of the picture relationship with Cudi. I mean, Cudi's standing next to Kanye in those famous photos from Life of Pablo listening in Madison Square Garden. You know, he participated in that album. But I know that those two guys, you know, have a complicated past. And while Cudi and Drake do, I mean, that was one of the more interesting features is you have The Weeknd, who, you know, has his own story with Drake appearing on Donda, but you have Kid Cudi on Certified Lover Boy. And, you know, the fact Cudi was in that text, if I'm not mistaken, that you just spoke of, you know, there's a lot of, you know, Baby Keem family ties here. There's a lot of stuff going on. So again, when you go to that headbutting and those headshots, is Drake doing more for Cudi right now? Maybe, maybe not. Does their piecing it up play with Kanye's headspace mentally, emotionally? Possibly. So to do that record is interesting, especially when there are no guests in the entire evening. You know, so to do a record that has somebody else on the song and that somebody isn't there and it's not a hit. I mean, so many of the songs that Drake performed, these are the first time he's ever performed them. Whether it's a Certified Lover Boy joint or a Scary Hours 2 joint, I looked at one of my favorite websites, and it works a lot for, you know, artists that have varying set lists. Nights Tonight is setlist.fm. I love this website, and they will tell you, especially with prominent, you know, well-recognized artists like Drake and Kanye, the times in their career that they performed them. Most of these songs that Drake does, he has never performed before, and you can make the case, okay, well, he has an album to promote. The album didn't live up to necessarily expectations. Kanye got an Album of the Year nomination from the Grammys. Drake did not. But again, to your point, Reggie, of the 21 songs on CLB, why, you know, why these? Why these and why this order?
And why the other 6 out of all of your massive hits? He probably has 20 number 1 hits too, right? Why the 6 on, like, from mixtapes and, like, you know, 2 album drops and stuff like that? Like, it's very, very, very curious, but also seems to be very calculated when you put it together. So I Am Y2, you know, Cudi, former ally of Kanye, you know, same theme as Virgil. Like, Kanye feels like he raised them, but you know, he maybe surpasses him in critical acclaim, if not commercial success, and is now linking with Drake, who is like, you know, Kanye's his foil, his foe. And there's a line in I Am Y2 where Drake says, and I'm focused on getting more. They too stuck on getting even. I'm ready for it. Next song, Laugh Now, Cry Later. Now, this is a song that is just clearly aimed at his enemies, right? And we reported on this song too when it first came out. He says, tired of beefing with you bums. You can't even pay me enough to react. Now, during Duppy Freestyle, he had a line talking about, like, you know, he could come over and, like, you know, if they paid him enough, he would like lace him or something, but he wasn't going to do it. And he says, please don't play that in song that ends songs in this party. I can't even listen to that. I know that they at the crib going crazy, down bad. What they had didn't last. Damn, baby. Where do these ends be at when they're saying they're doing all this and all that? And he ends the song with that line. Like, man, come on. Like, this guy is aggressive at this point.
And I mean, that's a family jab. You know, you want to talk about Drake's mom, you want to talk about his baby's mom, you want to talk about his child. Um, you know, this is coming an hour or less than after Kanye said, baby, specifically you, Kimberly, I want you back. And he's there. That line in there speaks to the relationship and the crumbling. I mean, that's my interpretation. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me it's something else. But yeah, I mean, what a choice. What a choice of a song to do.
So now then he goes for 3 songs, Girls Want Girls, In the Bible, and Way Too Sexy. Turns down for a minute, right? Like not gonna just be full on like in your face. He does do subtle things, you know, double entendres, but then comes right back with Knife Talk, another song, you know, featuring guests. He doesn't have guests. Why is he doing these songs? Like it's not like a turn up song. It's not a greatest hit, nothing like that. Now the lyrics from this, I'm gonna drop this shit and have these, you know, peas dropping like, you know, flies. Type of end that can't look me in the eyes. I despise. When I see you, better put that pride to the side. Many times, plenty times, I survived. Beef is live.
Live.
Spoiler alert: this end dies.
And you know, one of the things
Wait,
context
wait,
again,
wait, wait, and then ends with gunshots.
yeah, yeah.
Man,
Yeah.
it's theater now. But sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, you know, Kanye spoke about on Drink Champs, you know, he was truly bothered with the fact that, you know, Drake's line of like, I'm gonna put your face on a Gildan. Like, he was really bothered by the fact that this rap beef had escalated to lyrical threats of violence and death. And, you know, we know Drake watched Drink Champs probably many times over that episode. And here you go with the knife talk, literally and figuratively.
Wow. I mean, it's crazy. And then the last song he does is God's Plan. And, you know, I know the refrain, you sing it, it's very sticky. I don't pay that much attention to the words, but again, you know, he says, I want to play this next song. I think it's real fitting now. That's what he says. Now, the lyrics of this song is bad things. It's a lot of bad things. Yeah, they're wishing and wishing and wishing on me. Like they're wishing bad things on me. So as enemies, I've been moving calm. Don't start no trouble with me. Trying to keep it peaceful, but it's a struggle for me. I hold back. Sometimes I won't. This is him saying, like, you know, he's executed his plan, you know, God's plan. Like he's going at his enemies. Like it's the, you know, so here we are. 8 of the 11 songs that he performed had lines that were very likely to apply to Kanye. 8 out of 12. Like these guys have been beefing for years. You just said that like it was almost a sneak attack to get Drake to even do this. Clearly, neither one of them even talked about Larry Hoover. Like Drake didn't even wear Hoover gear. He just said free to man them. And he does 8 songs out of a 254 charted hits catalog, you know, 258, 54 top 10 that don't make any rhyme or reason sense from a production standpoint, but from a I'm gonna go at you at your own event right in front of your face, and you know I'm going at you. No one else might catch it, but you know I'm going at you because you've already you've demonstrated you know how I go. And so this is it. Here you go. Like, dog, that was some roguish stuff, dog.
I think laugh now, cry later is fitting too, because I think these are smart bombs. I think this detonates. I think the adrenaline that must happen to go into an event like this. I mean, the intensity. I know we're going to talk about, you know, stage design and all of that for a second in a minute, but both of these guys are locked in to perform. And, you know, I'm sure Kanye is very well versed in CLB, but I don't know that he realizes what Drake did until later. So I think these are smart bombs that detonate later. Like, okay, you got your concert. Even a Jay Prince, who I am so sure that in 2018, Drake did not want to stand down. The anger and the vitriol that he must have felt over botching the mega million dollar Adidas deal, let alone the embarrassment of you're telling the world I'm a father before I get a chance to, before I get to do so with a song on Scorpion. The anger, if he could have ended Kanye's career right there with a diss, I damn sure believe he wanted to release it. But here you have somebody who's helped make your career possible, somebody who's respected and feared saying no. And I'm sure had a plan in that. And I think this is the maturation of that plan, the crystallization of like, if we're going to do this, let me steer the ship. So it helps me. It helps, Larry Hoover. It does all of this. And I'm sure Drake is on one hand interested that he can hopefully change the narrative, but on another hand, did something that people like you, because you discovered it, will realize and take a different turn on the event itself.
I'm going to say it again. Kanye's words, not mine. Drake don't do a diss song where it's an outright headshot. He's going to set it up like war. He's going to do stuff like live 5 blocks down the street from you, DM every girl in your family, every single girl around your family, all your guys' girls. Man, this was just, it was masterful from a strategic perspective. The fact that he pulled it off with like seemingly no one like realizing, like I didn't pick it up until we were preparing for this, and I haven't seen coverage of it anywhere else. And again, like you can call me crazy, a conspiracy theorist, but I think we've laid out enough, like, context, enough correlations, enough direct references that, this is not just, nonsense.
So it's interesting. I took a look at this and I was trying to think of, other cases in history where something like this could happen. So I looked at, Jay continues to perform Takeover at different times. It is not a staple of his show. Nas has not performed Ether since 2007, according to setlist.fm. And when he performed it in October of 2007, which is approximately 2 years after he and Jay in Newark stood on stage together, and after they had made 2 songs together, Black Republicans and Success, he did Ether, but he did it as part of a medley and it included no dissing. I looked at Corrupt with calling out names. I looked at a lot of artists. I'm like, how do they treat their diss records? From what I understand, DJ Quick does not perform Dollars and Cents anymore. That one, I'm sure there's people that have seen him that might be able to tell me otherwise. The one case, who continues to perform a diss record? And it's interesting because it's one of the greatest diss records of all times. Take a guess.
Wow, it's Ice Cube.
It is. Including this year, Cube still performs No Vaseline. I mean, he changes a few words, but I mean, what's interesting about that is, one of the people that he dedicates the most real estate in the song to going at is Eazy-E, who's been dead for 25 years plus. But it's interesting. And when Cube performed it, and I was watching on YouTube, just for context, he even states that, like, look, I went and made America's Most. I didn't diss these guys. I tried to get out of the group. They came at me. And boy, did I retaliate. And then, he goes into the record. And I think that that's really interesting. And the fact that, on this stage, that Drake would perform any record that this is Kanye is just, it's a very unprecedented creative choice. And the fact that, again, all these joints on CLB, these are the ones that he chooses.
Right. And even that could be construed to be against Kanye, right? You have such a huge pick. So why would you even put anything out there that could be even spun to this Kanye? And why, these loose like records that were not huge chart hits or anything like that? Like, dude, it's wild when you piece it all together. So yeah, man, it was a huge production. Massive stage, probably cost a ton of people, but the narrative that unfolded on stage was just incredible to me. And anything else you want to talk about with this?
Well, let me ask you a question. I mean, let's say this was a figurative versus, and Kanye got the hits, but now with this context, if this is a this or that battle, and Kanye performed more songs than Drake. It's not a 50-50 true versus, but who, quote unquote, won in your estimation?
Well, if this theory is correct, then, on its face, you would think that Kanye won because he played his hits, but Drake, this was a massacre. Like, this was a full on like sniper attack. Like he had lethal blows here. Like, so if it was a versus in terms of strategy and execution, Drake for sure, but I will say that it does still allow them. Well, maybe not, right? It's almost like Jermaine Dupri versus Puff, where Puff played all his hits, and Jermaine Dupri didn't do anything. So I don't know how they could have a versus now because Kanye played a lot of his hits. Drake didn't. And so what's Kanye gonna do? Play all the same stuff again? You know, like
Yeah.
that's not gonna work. So it was masterful on a couple of levels.
Yeah, and that's funny too, because you and I have speculated who would win in a true versus format of them going 20 rounds hit for hit. And I have to believe, and I said so, like I think Kanye's got the edge up. Um, but with this strategy, I mean, that's a totally different take. I mean, we've given so much props to the Locks for using performing and rehearsal and just coming in super tight and doing what they did to Dipset. This is wild to be so strategic and thematic with a set list, and not even have people realize till a couple of days go by and you're like, that's wild. I mean, that's the win to me. And I also think, absolutely, to your point, I agree, Kanye had better song selection. Of course he did. I mean, he went with hit after hit after hit. Drake was a clearer performer, especially when Kanye was trying to sneak in a melody. I think his voice took a lot of beating, just doing that many songs. I was amazed. I was critical of the lip syncing that happened during the Bone Thugs and Harmony 3-6 Mafia in some places. I've never seen Drake live do a headlining set, and I know this wasn't, he was a special guest, but I've never seen Drake do this many songs. It is wild to watch Drake flip into melody and the rapping so seamlessly. Like his vocal ability performing was really impressive to me. And he was a lot crisper and clearer than Kanye. I think Kanye has a little bit of a better stage presence. He uses the stage more effectively in his emotions and all of that. But yeah, Drake, if this was a versus, Drake did much more with less.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's wild. It's a wild thing. So yeah, but I welcome like people to prove us wrong, but this one I feel pretty strongly about.
Well, the interesting thing too, as a last thought, is I don't know that we will get confirmation or even like a denouement on this. Like Drake has not done crazy press, really since that shop interview.
Yeah,
He's not done hip hop press.
yeah.
And Kanye, I truly believe, unless he kind of wants to create a new statement, on Virgil and maybe this. I mean, I really, it's been a month since Drink Champs and he's let that breathe. So this will be one of those things that kind of lives in infamy until we get the proper conversation with either one of those. But in either event, to your point, and a point that you've been making since this was announced, the narrative continues.
Yeah, man, for sure. We talked about this too when the album dropped, that there were Kanye disses sprinkled throughout. Most people focused on 7 a.m. Unbridled Path, but you could hear them starting with Champagne Poetry and continuing throughout the album. But there are plenty of songs that don't. So again, why these songs from this album and why the other songs from his entire catalog, man? Like you're gonna have to really, really give me a strong counter as to why he would do this if it's not just to diss Kanye in his face on the biggest stage possible.
So one other question to you. You asked me after Drink Champs if it made me listen to Donda differently. Does this make you appreciate or contextualize or like CLB anymore?
It does not, but it just reaffirms what a mastermind Drake is. This guy is so strategic and thinks things out, so many steps ahead. It's scary. And I think the thing it proves to me is there's no accident why he has had the chart success that he has for 12 straight years. People want to hate, like it or not, this guy is incredibly, incredibly successful, and it's for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, he's the Marvin's Room guy, and in many ways, CLB is kind of a "Hear My Dear," but it's to Kanye, not an ex-wife.
Yeah.
And I think that album will live forever that way. And I think that this concert created a moment to contextualize that album. When people write biographies on these guys, this will be an event. And I think your insight helped them get to an awakening that they might not have caught on their own.
Word. So a couple other things happened this week. Jussie Smollett found guilty. Any surprises there? I think we all kind of knew what was going on a couple years ago.
That one didn't surprise me. I think the only thing that surprised me is that it happened so late in the day. And we ended up not covering it. You and I had a conversation about it, but we're going to hear about that one for a while. And that's the only thing that's a little bit, frustrating about that. I think that, people will take that event and use it to negate so much good work that's done, in the community.
Yeah. And yeah, you want to talk about Greg Tate?
Yeah, I just want to say rest in peace to Greg Tate. I mean, truly, he is, one of the pioneering. I don't, hip hop journalist absolutely works, but I think Greg Tate was much more than that. I think, he was just one of the great Black critics. And, I say this as a white guy, but, from what I've listened of so many others, Greg provided context and just a really clever surgical way of looking at the world that really considered Black interpretation. He was a poet, he was a musician in his own right. I didn't know Greg, but Greg had mentored some of the people that I've looked up to in this industry. And I really encourage, anyone out there, if you're new to the name or you just saw something this week from, a few of the great, obituaries out there, read Greg's work. One of the things I didn't realize, he is who Gang Starr sampled in the Militia when there's that cut in of hip hop is not what it is today. Greg has a phenomenal poem, on what is hip hop that is kind of like a Gil Scott Heron, inspired, spoken word piece that I would really, really, really encourage anyone to listen to, as well as his writing. He has several collections of essays out. But yeah, in a year marred by losses, to find that out was just one more kind of lump, in a major way.
Yeah. Yeah. And Sly and Robbie passed away too. Yeah. You want to talk about that or?
Yeah. I mean, I'm newer to the dance hall party. Like for me, I learned of Sly and Robbie, and this might be embarrassing, through the Fugees remix. But I know these guys are legends. You may even know more than I do, truthfully.
Yeah, no, I didn't listen to their music much. I know the name, but yeah, yeah. I mean, it continues. December, I don't know, for whatever reason, it seems like December. There are a lot of passings,
Yeah.
But yeah, rest in peace to him. And
Slim 400 too. Anyone, and one of the artists that AFH has really gotten behind in years is YG. Especially the My Crazy Life album. To me, I thought that was one of the best things that Def Jam had put out. You and I spent a whole podcast talking about the current state of Def Jam. I think 2 podcasts actually. And Slim 400 was one of YG's kind of understudies, and he was shot and killed this week in Southern California, Compton native. And you're right. I mean, just December, after a year of just so many crushing news stories of sudden losses. What a damn week,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, on a positive note, Dr. Dre, sounds like new music is coming soon from him in a couple of days, actually. As part of Grand Theft Auto, they have an online version of the game called The Contract, where Dre supposedly is looking for his lost phone, which has tons of music on it, unreleased music. And so it's a real cool execution. The trailer looks dope. I used to play the Grand Theft Auto back in the day. I had San Andreas and Vice City. Yeah. Haven't played in quite a while, but this sounds to me to be dope, and I'm sure there's going to be like a separate standalone soundtrack and everything. But we're getting new Dr. Dre music, which is amazing.
Yeah, and if you go to Ambrosia for Heads, they're with the news, and the full project will be out December 15th. But there's in the trailer there's a snippet of a song of Dre and Anderson .Paak. Paak is in the video game too. And there's a cool build out of it relating to GTA characters. And I'm a lot like you, Reggie. Like I played the game back in the day. I thought it was phenomenal. I love the music incorporation. I actually had the first Grand Theft Auto when it came out in like the late 90s, which was not as sophisticated, but I always thought like this is the video game I always wanted when I was a kid. But yeah, DJ Pooh is involved as well, and he was a big part of San Andreas. But there's going to be a special radio station with a lot of new music. And that song that you hear in the trailer, Busta Rhymes, and it's in our story as well, played more of it, and it features Busta and Snoop. So anytime Snoop and Dre come together, I mean, that's history, let alone with Busta and Anderson. So
speaking of new music, Russ dropped an album. It's been a big week for Russ. He did a freestyle on LA Leakers over an Outkast joint, which was dope. Did you check that out?
I did, man. It was a song of the day. You texted me, and I thought it was phenomenal. And Russ also said something really dope in that interview I'm going to mention in a second, but continue. I know that album. Yeah.
His album, this is a guy who has been independent, definitely got a big ego. A lot of people have been critical of him. But he put out an album where he's just rapping, and he had a ton of guests, but not like high profile guests. He had people who were respected and among the most credible artists, definitely within the AFH sphere. So he had Ransom, Papoose, The Game had an incredible verse, West Side Gun, Styles P, Big Crit, Snoop, Jay Electronica, Hit Boy, Conway, Saha the Prince, like Joey Badass, like really incredible. Premier produced, Static Selector produced. He's got Mozzie on it. It's an incredible like lineup.
Yeah, I mean, what I think is so dope, and so Russ told the LA Leakers, this is a quote, I'm just trying to cultivate a home for people who want to rap and just go crazy. Not any of this 8 bars and then bridge. Nah, rap for a minute and a half, and then you rap for another minute and a half. And we'll put a little hook in between or whatever that'll get us through the shit, but let's keep pushing. I like the fact, I mean, Russ is incredible. His independence is something that's controversial because, he's the son of a prominent industry exec. He put out a song a week on SoundCloud for years, got really hot through that, got a deal with Columbia that further pushed his records with infrastructure. And he's always credited himself as an independent artist. A lot of people have taken umbrage with Chance the Rapper with those similar claims, or Macklemore previously. But Russ has come in and he sings, he raps, he produces. But I love the fact that with all of the influence in the moment he has, that he really dedicated himself to the culture. I think back in the day, there was this moment where all of your superstars kind of got that obligatory DJ Premier produced joint on their album, or their Alchemist joint, or their For the Heads moment. And Russ, last year put out a 4 or a 5 pack called Chomp, but this year he does an entire album. And I'm not somebody who spends a lot of time listening to Russ, full disclosure. We ran a headline on the site that this is among the year's best. Within the year's, top 15 or 20 albums and climbing, I wholeheartedly believe that. What I love is, Russ is somebody on Spotify alone. He has 14 million, and I'm sure that number will go through the roof with a new release, but million listeners. And he takes an album that has primo production, high tech, Ninth Wonder, Jake One, Bink, on and on and on, Alchemist, I think. And then goes on and gives all those MCs that you're talking about, and he hangs in there with them. I mean, to me, this is like, a DJ Khaled album of just pure hip hop, and Russ hangs in there and really has some interesting things to say. Not unlike Drake or Kanye, he has an interesting, way of speaking directly to his critics. I just really, really enjoyed it, and I didn't see it coming. And I'm happy that AFH, I mean, we had supported a freestyle from Russ some years ago, but I know we get pushback sometimes for the choices we make. One of our biggest stories ever back in the day was a Waka Flocka Flame freestyle.
Right.
But Rocka spit, and Russ is absolutely spitting. And I encourage anyone, if you're resistant or you've never listened to a Russ joint before, check our playlist for the best of, and after that, play the whole album.
Word, it's a dope project. So Rick Ross dropped something too. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see this coming. I saw Rick was in the news, but usually his rollouts are bigger. It's called Richer Than I've Ever Been. Once again, Ross coming with these, epic titles. And this one I thought was interesting. You had put a joint on our playlist called Rapper Estates with Ross and Benny the Butcher. This is the second time they've worked together by my count. I really, really like the chemistry between these two guys. I mean, people talk about these dream collabo scenarios. I know Benny just signed with Def Jam under Snoop, but I could see Benny doing an MMG album too with Black Mafia Family. That's my joint on the album. What else is cool on there too? Ross did Warm Words in a Cold World. It's a collaboration with Future, which is damn near the same beat, tweaked a little bit as LL Cool J's Ill Bomb, which that's a classic joint. And there's another one on there I really like called Made It Out Alive. I struggle, and Ross has made some great albums. Teflon Don, I mean, you and I talk about it often in our own conversations as one of the best albums of the 2010s. But this one doesn't seem to have a necessary like cohesive theme. It felt a little bit like I'm gonna, sort of like what we said about CLB, like I'm gonna make some songs for this pocket of my fan base, some for this, some for this. but those ones I really like. But
Yeah,
you're a bigger Ross fan than I am historically. Any takeaways for you?
I'm a huge Ross fan. You know, Teflon Don, Deeper Than Rap, Mastermind. Like he's got some albums that to me are like classic material. But this one was like, I didn't even make it all the way through. I think I made it through 8 out of 11, something like that. Like I had 3 songs to go. And it was just okay to me, you know. I need to, I'm gonna give it more time and more listens because I am a Ross fan and I want to see it open up. But yeah, over the last several years, there hasn't been an album of his that stood out to me like those albums in the earlier years. So, but the Benny song is dope. Love hearing him on features with other artists. So I'll definitely give it a couple more spins.
Yeah, I hope that when we talk about Nas winning his first Grammy, Rick Ross has not been a Grammy saluted artist, and I know Grammys are in a weird transition of what do they even mean to hip hop. But I would love Ross with the space that he has and the resources that he has to really make another swing for the fences with a great album, because I do think that he's been snubbed in the past. But I would like to just see that mainstream validation, for him. And I think it would just be a cool thing to motivate him to make the kind of album that I believe he's capable of. But this week too, Big Boy and Sleepy Brown dropped the Big Sleepover. People may not realize, but this album consists of singles that have been coming out for the last 2.5 years. A lot of those joints, I've really, really liked. Sleepy Brown is somebody that, first of all, I'm a huge Big Boy fan. Love Outkast, but Sleepy Brown is so talented. Especially people forget that he is 1/3 of Organized Noise. Phenomenal producer, but also the sauce that he adds to a song as a singer. He kind of veers into almost that kind of rap, sort of like Nate Dogg did. But I've been enjoying that. I mean, a lot of the songs are familiar to me, but it's a good listen. And then over the weekend, I haven't, it's a double album, but I've been playing Alicia Keys' new Keys album. And that opens really strong.
Word. Yeah. I like Alicia. Haven't listened to her in a while, but definitely want to check that album out for sure.
Word. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's been the week for me. If you get Gangstar heads out there, there's a new Primo and 2 Chainz joint called Mortgage Free. Great to hear those two guys together that I encourage. But yeah, man. Anything else on your radar?
Nah, man, that's it. That's it for me. Dope week for hip hop. I think it's gonna be crazy seeing how I want to see how this plays out. But yeah, really, really dope.
Me too, man. Well, as a parting thought, do you have a song of the week?
Yeah, my song of the week, I think it's gonna be that Russ freestyle, man. I thought it was dope. I thought he really, really went in. Not only like the cadence and the flow to it, but actually saying something, and over Outkast beat. I think this dude is really talented. I think if people can get past like the bravado and just like listen to the music, I think he's got a lot to offer.
Yeah, I believe that too. I'm gonna go with a joint called "Fell Asleep Praying" by Archibald Slim, who is an artist that was new to me. My man Jeff Weiss, who's one of the best rap journalists now, and just journalists period, was talking about him. And his label actually put out the album, but this dude came up with Playboy Cardi and Father and the whole Awful Records crew. And that song, man, it reminds me of kind of the sentiment of early Big Crit, of just that Southern soul with one foot in the street, one foot in something more aspirational, but also like a phenomenal delivery. Like I'm a big fan of Maxo Cream, and it kind of reminds me of that. And I've probably played that song 35 times this week. So I encourage, if you like that kind of hip hop, that kind of rap, check that joint out.
Wow, that's dope. All right, man. Well, next week I think we're gonna wrap things up. Looking forward to that one. But as the hip hop goes, who knows? We'll see what the cycle brings us. So
anything goes, man. Well, thank you to everyone listening, and I'll talk to you next week, my friend.